Let's just start with, tell me about what's going on in Del Rio and Eagle Pass.
Okay, so all you have to do is turn on the news and you can see that we're super busy on the border. And that's southwest border wide. We're really busy in every location. But Del Rio sector is uncommonly busy. So we've never seen anything like this in our history. We're the second busiest sector in the nation, which is saying something. The Rio Grande Valley remains the busiest sector in the nation. They're seeing probably 3 times as much traffic as we are, but we're the second busiest in the nation. And what that really means in context is we're catching about 1,000 people a day down in the Del Rio sector. And that's from about 40 miles into Webb County all the way across to the Terrell County line. And then 47 counties north to include Tom Green and a lot of these counties up here.
Yeah, we actually fall into the Del Rio sector here.
Okay. You do.
So for folks who may not understand, what is kind of a typical day for a Border Patrol agent now?
So it's changed, right? And it changes given the change in threat. Right now, a lot of our Border Patrol agents are dedicating the vast majority of their time to processing care and detention. So we have a lot of folks who are coming across the border right now, and they're surrendering to us. So groups of 100, 150. And in our Del Rio station specifically, we've got about 60 to 70% of the station dedicated to doing nothing but dealing with that flow of humanity coming in. But in other stations, say the Carrizo Springs stations out on our far eastern flank, while they're still processing a lot of folks, they also have a lot of traffic trying to get around us. So the number of folks who are getting away from us are increasing because the number of agents that we have to deploy are all dedicated to processing care and detention of these groups that are given up. And I think one thing that typically gets misinterpreted is that the most of the people that we're dealing with are folks surrendering, and that's not really the case. Right now it's about half and half. We have half of the folks that we're catching are actually trying to surrender. The other half are trying to get away from us, and these folks are trying to get away for a reason. Many of them have a criminal history. The number of sex offenders that we've encountered so far this fiscal year is up 1,400%. It's crazy. The number of folks that we have that are affiliated with gangs. The number of smuggling cases, human smuggling cases over the road, that is up tremendously high. So far this fiscal year, we've prosecuted over 700 human smuggling cases. We've actually prosecuted that many, so that's crazy. Just in the last 30 days, we've caught over 300 human smuggling cases, and that's a combination of us and all of our partners. You visited with the Sheriff of Kimball County, so his county has seen a huge increase in the number of over-the-road smuggling cases as well, and he's 2 counties removed from the actual border. So when we say that every community is a border community, this is kind of what we're talking about. So this isn't a problem that's specific to the border. These folks that are coming across, whether or not they're trying to get away from us or whether or not they're trying to surrender to us, they're not staying in the border communities. They're moving into the interior of the United States.
And that kind of leads me to my next question, the ripple effects and why they are coming here. I'm sure you've talked to, and your agents talk to them as they come across. What's their story? What do they tell you?
So a lot of them come for various different reasons, right? So some of them are fleeing significant hardship in their country. Some of them are coming for family reunification. They had family members that came here illegally over the years, and they're coming to be reunited with them in places like New York and Seattle and Chicago and wherever. And then some are coming for economic benefit, right? They want to come in and get a job. But there are also a whole lot of them who are coming here kind of blending in with that other group because they have a criminal history. And they're trying to get back to the United States. So I'll take you back to the comment earlier on the number of sex offenders that we've arrested just in the Del Rio sector. So these are not folks who committed sex crimes in their country and were prosecuted there, because it's very difficult for us to get into the criminal histories of other countries. It just takes a lot of time. Even working through foreign governments, it's very difficult to get that information. We're talking about people who were here, committed sex crimes, were charged and convicted, and prosecuted and convicted, and then we deported them, and now they're coming back. And so these are folks who have committed crimes in the country here before, in the U.S. here before, and now they're trying to come back. And so we see a lot of that. The folks who are trying to get away from us on our flanks, they're using every method that they possibly can. So we've got them walking through the brush. I think the sheriff probably talked to you about folks backpacking, and moving through his county on foot. So you've got them hiding in the trunks of cars. We've actually found them locked inside, one person locked inside a toolbox with a padlock. We found them in trains. The number of arrests that we're seeing in trains is up over 900% in Uvalde County. They're hiding them in the engine compartments of trains, in false floors on flatbed trailers with heavy equipment sitting on top of them. So all of these methods to try and circumvent. These are folks, again, who don't want to be caught. They want to get away, and there's a reason for that. They've committed crimes in the country before. So I want you to, we'll take it all the way back to point of origin. And so everything on the border is controlled by the drug cartels, by the transnational criminal organizations. And so everyone has to pay, period. If you're going to come into the country and surrender to a Border Patrol agent, you're paying smugglers from point of origin. Let's say you're coming from Venezuela. We're seeing a dramatic increase in the number of folks coming from Venezuela. So they're paying to be brought through Venezuela into Mexico and then down to Acuña or Piedras Negras in the Del Rio sector. And they pay to the point where they get them to the river. And once they get across the river, they're told, go surrender to a Border Patrol agent. And so they're done. They're done at that point. But the other folks who are trying to circumvent the Border Patrol, so they don't, their payment keeps going, because now they've got to be paid to be moved through the interior of the United States as well. And so the transnational criminal organizations are making a huge profit on the hardship of all of these folks. To the tune of about $25 million a week is what our current estimate is. And that's just for moving people. That doesn't count drugs or weapons or anything else, just people. The criminal organizations are making about $25 million a week just in the Del Rio sector. And so when you're moving, because again, remember, these cartels don't think of these people as people or as human beings. They think of them as a commodity. And so if they're going to move that commodity, they want to move it through the safest area possible so that they can get the most money possible. And so depending on where you're coming from, they charge higher prices the further away you are, and then again, higher prices the further into the country that you want to get. And they want to make sure that they move you through a safe area because they're charging you a lot of money. Cartel violence is relatively light in Coahuila, the state in Mexico across from Del Rio and Eagle Pass. It's a bit more violent in Nuevo Laredo, down in Tamaulipas, over in Chihuahua. But in our area, it's relatively calm with regard to cartel violence. So that's a safer place for them to move these people through, and they can charge more money. If they want to get away from us, they've got to try and outsmart us. And they really have to try and get past our checkpoints. So they'll bring them across. They'll put them in stash houses in Eagle Pass or Del Rio for days or weeks, and then they'll break them into smaller groups, and they'll move them through in, like we said, the trunks of cars, in trains, under false floors of flatbed trailers, mixed in with produce in enclosed trailers. They'll try anything to get them by. They'll walk them around the checkpoint and pick them up on the north side of the checkpoint, or they'll try and beat us at our checkpoints and beat the canines. They'll do anything that they can do to try and get these folks across, because again, if they're moving them into the interior, payment doesn't stop at the border. And the further they are moving them in, the more they pay. And a lot of these folks, if it costs more than they have in their pocket, then once they get to their final destination, if they still owe the criminal organization money, well, they go into indentured servitude until that bill is paid.
So that indentured servitude, what are the types of jobs that they force them to do?
Anything. It can be anything. So whatever job they take, whatever money they make goes back to the cartel until their bill is paid in full.
So for these folks, they've got to know the risks coming across. When you speak to them, why do they do it? Because it's so risky.
They feel like coming here is worth the risk. So, I mean, the daily wage in whatever country they're coming from is nothing compared to what they can make here. If they have family already here, they want to reunify with that family. So there are many different reasons why. And again, the folks who are criminals, the criminal enterprise that they can involve themselves in here is going to be more lucrative for them than it would be on the south side of the border. So everyone has their own reason for coming to the United States. But what needs to happen is they need to come here legally, right? And so on the criminal side, that's never going to happen. So the folks who have criminal histories are not going to try to come here legally. The folks who are surrendering need to go through the process and try and come here by legal means.
So speaking of, just resources and everything like that, what is, how would you explain, I guess, how this border crisis is affecting the agents? Because we've got, agencies from all over, and even all over America now, Florida, everywhere, coming to help y'all. So what is, it's just chaos, it seems like.
So we're very, very busy, busier again than we've ever been. Del Rio sector is relatively small as far as sectors go. So along the southwest border, the border area is broken up into Border Patrol sectors. And over our history, we've seen surges like this in activity in San Diego, in El Paso, in Tucson, in the Rio Grande Valley. We never have seen anything like this in Del Rio. Just to our west in the Big Bend sector, they're seeing a tremendous increase in apprehensions as well. They've never seen anything like this. So this traffic is now being pushed through a lot of the areas where we've never seen it before. And because we never saw it before, we never resourced to that problem. So we've got Big Bend sector and Del Rio sector are the least staffed sectors in the entire border in Texas. And so while we've got a lot of agents in other areas, we're having to detail them into our area to kind of help out. The problem is it's busy everywhere. So we're pulling agents from our northern border, we're pulling agents from the coastal border to help us with the processing piece, right? Because we've got processing, care, and detention. That's the big draw on our manpower. So we're using them to process, and then our agents, to the extent that we can, we're trying to get them out to deal with a lot of this traffic on our flanks because they know the area. But all help is good help. Texas Parks and Wildlife, Texas DPS, our partners with state and local sheriff's office and police departments, they have all come to our aid to help us deal with this problem because, again, it's not just a border problem. So this is affecting communities all through the interior. So the number of high-speed pursuits that we have seen so far this year is up 1,000%. It's crazy. All of our partners are seeing the same kinds of increases in high-speed pursuits because typically we would have a lot of agents out working the border and we would be catching these smuggling cases closer to the border, or we would be catching the people who were coming across before they get into smuggling vehicles. But because we're dedicated now to processing, care, and detention, and we're not out there, more people are making it into cars, more people are making it into stash houses and then cars, and then they wind up on our highways, and our state and local law enforcement see them. That turns into pursuits, which can turn deadly. And so everyone is pushing south towards the border to try and get a handle on it at the border so that it doesn't affect these communities like that.
So going back to the care and the processing and the detention, could you explain that process? What happens? Okay, they surrender to you, then what?
So for us in the Del Rio sector, so we'll use Del Rio Station as an example. So let's say we catch a group of 100. They come across the border and they surrender to us. So we will encounter them on the river, either us or one of our partners. And the first thing that we do is we triage that group. We try and figure out whether or not we have any unaccompanied children in the group, whether they're family units, if anyone needs medical attention, if we have pregnant females, because this is all the mix that we deal with. And we break those into individual kind of specific groups. Right now, if we have family units, we're moving them down to Eagle Pass, where we have the big soft side processing center. That gives us more capacity to process those folks. And the NGO that we have there has a higher capacity as well, so they can provide more help. Our single adults, they're coming into the Del Rio station area. They're getting processed there. And then all of our unaccompanied children go to Uvalde. So every group has a place where we can dedicate resources to them. Once we finish processing these folks, if they have a criminal history, we're seeking prosecution on them. Our U.S. attorneys have been really good to us. The local district attorneys are really helping out as well. Border prosecutions units are helping. If we can prosecute them for crimes committed, or if they're ag felons, reentry after deport, we will try and prosecute those folks. If they don't have a criminal history, let's say they're a family unit, and we need to release them on their own recognizance pending an immigration hearing, what we're doing is we're processing them for that hearing, and then we're taking them to one of our NGOs, and the NGOs will provide humanitarian aid, and they will help them get a bus ticket out of the border area to go wherever it is to wait on their immigration hearing. Because remember, the immigration hearings don't happen on the border. They happen at locations throughout the country. A lot of these groups are also being handed over to ICE enforcement removal operations. If they meet detention requirements, we will hand them over to ERO, and ERO will take them and put them into a detention facility somewhere in the interior of the country as well. So it depends on the demographic and how all of that works. If any of them are sick or if any of them are injured, we immediately take them to the hospital. We get them taken care of. I do have about 115 or so medics assigned to the sector, so Border Patrol agents who are also trained as medics. So everyone that we encounter on the river goes through an initial medical screening with our agents. Then they come into the station where we have contract medical staff. They give them an assessment. And then before we release anyone or before we transfer anyone over to ERO, they go through a third medical assessment. So we're very serious about taking care of the folks that we have in our custody. We have an obligation to do that. But to your question about how it's affected the agents, it's frustrating. It's frustrating. No police officer anywhere in the country wants to go to work, make arrests, and release people. It's contrary to our nature. But what you have to understand is that Border Patrol agents can only operate within the confines of the law, right? And so the law is established, and we operate within those confines as governed by the policies of the day, right? And so our agents, we tell them, keep your head up. We know you're frustrated, but we're doing everything that we can possibly do to deal with this problem. And we've got a lot of help from our state and local partners. We're focused on primarily one thing. Every single person that we can, we want to make an arrest. We want to get them into the office. We want to run biometrics because we need to make sure we know exactly who we're dealing with, to the extent that we can, why they're here and what their intentions are. We have little control over what the final outcome is going to be with them with regard to their immigration proceedings. If they are amenable to return to their country, we'll return them to their country. If they're amenable to prosecution, we'll prosecute them. If they're going to be set up for an immigration hearing at a later date, we release them on their own recognizance and they await that hearing. We have no control over that, but what we do control is being out there to catch everyone that we can that is illegally entering this country so that we can know who they are. That's the key, is we have to know who is coming into the country and why they're here, because that's what border security is about. Border security is national security. If we don't know who these people are and they're getting away from us, how can we possibly know what their intentions are?
So I don't know if you want to, or if you can comment on, like political things, but y'all live this every day. What are some solutions that you would like to see, or maybe the lawmakers you'd suggest to them?
Yeah, and so we don't do politics. We don't. So the Border Patrol is an apolitical, interdictive organization. Our agents come to work every day. They get their patrol car. They go to the river, to the checkpoints, to some of our interior stations like Rock Springs and San Angelo. They work with our state and locals, and their focus is identifying threats, whatever that threat might be, interdicting those threats, bringing them to the office. We process them within the confines of the law as governed by the policy, and then we dispose of them in accordance with the law and policy. Sometimes we put them in jail, sometimes we hand them over to ICRO for detention, and sometimes we end up releasing them. We don't do politics. I will tell you that we're in dire need of resources. You talked to the sheriff of Kimball County, and I wasn't there for the conversation, but I'm almost confident he talked to you about a lack of resources, and how his lack of resources is compounded because he's helping us. And that's the case with every sheriff, with every police chief. The more of their resources that they dedicate to helping us deal with the border situation, and we're thankful that they're doing it. We need their help. But the more resources they apply to this, the less those resources are available to the residents of those counties and those cities and their constituency. And so calls go unanswered in their county, in their city, because the deputies are down helping us. Or at least maybe they don't go unanswered, but they certainly are delayed in response. And we have the same problem in the Border Patrol. Our landowners will call us and say, hey, I have a group on my game camera. They came through here and I just, it just happened. We're on the way. Well, when will you be here? It might take us an hour because I've only got 1 or 2 or 3 agents working 30 or 40 or 50 miles of border, because the rest are dedicated to processing, care, and detention. So we're super thankful for all of the help that our partners give us, but we also know that that comes at a cost to the residents that they serve. They're helping us deal with this federal issue, and the local issues, some of them are delayed in response. I do really want folks to understand that the story that needs to be told is the criminal aspect of this. So there's a lot of attention and a lot of focus on these groups that are coming and surrendering. It makes for good TV. It does. And it is a big problem for us because it is causing us to bog down in processing. But the real story is the effect that has. And the effect that has is I don't have agents patrolling the border. And without agents patrolling the border, we have more people getting away. And again, if they're getting away, we never had the opportunity to run biometrics checks on them. We don't know who they are. We don't know if they're criminals. We don't know if they have nefarious intent. We have to be out there on the border to catch these folks. That's why we're so thankful for all of the support from our state and local law enforcement. They're working the rural highways in areas where we can't be right now. So at least they're helping us stop some of these human smuggling cases before they get up into the interior counties. Are they always successful? No, neither are we. So stuff gets away from us, it does. But to the extent that we can limit that and make these arrests closer to the border, that helps us keep all of these high-speed chases out of our local communities north of the border.